Now, with the council, they change the ball or move the goalposts every 10 years or so. 1976, no prohibitions, open slather. I could have done what I wanted to do. 1983, they bring in the new one, 1993, Rural C. 1999, they tried to bring in a new one from Tascue, the new local area plan, and it got tighter and tighter. Next year, you're going to be faced with this thing here. If you're, I don't know if you're fortunate or unfortunate now, but if you own more than just a normal building block and you happen to fall in the environmental management zone, you cannot build more than one house on it. Okay? 60 hectares. I can only put 6 houses on there if I wanted to. But the people up in Mount Nelson who happen to have 3 or 4 acres, one house. They might want to put a house for their mother or father, a granny flat. No. So this thing here you want to think about very carefully. And actually it's the thing that got my backup. And as far as the zoning is concerned, the zoning which applies now, I can apply for this. So I'll just read my in conclusion on the reply to their objections. In conclusion, I have a property which I hold dearly. The value of the flora and the fauna on the property, I value the flora and fauna on the property, and I'm very concerned for the welfare of both. I also have a timber resource. I appreciate there needs to be some balance between conservation and the use of the resources I have. I believe the Forest Practices Code provides this balance. Many wattle trees are reaching the end of their lifespan and usually fall to the ground. I have also several large eucalypts which fall during the course of the year. I have an ever-increasing problem with bushfire management and protection costs. I need to be able to operate legally. Okay, I want certainty. I'm not going to negotiate with the City Council and let them say, yes, it's okay, and then 2 or 3 years down the track, there's a dispute, we haven't got a working code to relate to, a set of guidelines, a set of rules. It's on a whim of the councillors, who are the aldermen, what the numbers are, how it's stacked. It does not make any sense for me to allow a renewable resource to fall to the ground, add to an ever-increasing fuel load, impinge on the visual landscape and be left to eventually rot or provide fuel for a fire. I can make some use of this product, either by way of firewood or to mill some of the bigger logs with my portable sawmill. Okay. Any questions?
Could I also, just before I take your questions, could I allow the 2 other speakers to respond briefly?
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, and it was certainly good to hear your concerns and have them raised at this meeting, because I think it is important to get both sides of the story. I'd like to respond, and thanks for the right of reply, Bill. Look, I believe that discussions today and certainly with the current planning scheme do allow local harvesting to occur. So that was the intention of the amendment that was made at council. I think Alderman Briscoe might have moved that to allow for discussion about sawmilling. But you can actually do that. It is a discretion under the current planning scheme to allow forest harvesting in that lower level. And one of the other things that was part of that amendment was for bushfire protection and to allow that. So I am still of the opinion that that can be done under the current planning scheme and that it doesn't need to go to the Forest Practices Board for a private timber reserve. So I guess we're looking at it from different perspectives, but I think the fairer perspective for ongoing involvement with this is to actually allow that to happen under the current planning scheme. The other thing is that it needs to be a level playing field, and I don't feel that taking it out of the current planning scheme will actually do that. And that's what happens with a private forest, private timber reserve. Mr McGrath mentioned the Forest Conservation Fund and the application, and he said that the Forest Conservation Fund didn't feel that it was worthy of funding, and that's true in the letter. But that doesn't mean that it was the species or the diversity that they were particularly interested in. There are various funding bodies and I think the suggestion was to go to the NRM to ask for funding there in that letter from the Forest Conservation Fund. And whilst it may not have been in their particular zone or interest, there may still, and Council's submission is that there is interest in the type of biodiversity that might be there. The other point, and Mr McGrath's intentions might be very clear, but as I stated before, if once it is sold, then again there is not that protection for the land. There is not the protection that the same person will lodge the same sort of application and have the same sense of stewardship for the land. So this isn't meant to be, and I'll take your point, it's not meant to be a personal attack on you at all. It is about the process and the lack of, the fact that there are actual choices to be made here. The choice to take it to a private timber reserve, to the Forest Practices Board, to my view, is not necessarily the right way of going about it. Hand over to me.
Just 3 minutes maximum, please, Michael. We'll ask. I know how you can go on
forever. Patrick was quoting extensively at one point from Tascue, and that's what it looks like. And it's a public document, isn't it, Patrick? Tascue. Yep. So, in the rear of the document, there's some written submissions in the back of the document. And these 5 submissions come from Messrs. Anthony Villara, Peter Gunter, Dennis Sprott, and Patrick McGrath. And I'll quote Patrick's submission. Mr. McGrath's concerns focus on the effect of any further restrictions on the value of his property. He refers to a number of current restrictions and how they've prevented him from using his land, in particular by preventing subdivision, loss of income from forestry and firewood production, loss of income from prevention of building on prime sites such as skylines, loss of agricultural land because of restrictions on land clearing, uncertainty of whether previously cleared land can be used, and the use of fire trails as walking tracks. Mr. McGrath suggests that if these restrictions are imposed, he should be compensated. Now, we've just heard a minute ago a person that just wants to effectively be able to cut up silver wattle, Acacia dilbata, that's got a life cycle, roughly 12 to 15 years, it'll just hit the deck. There was another reference to Eucalyptus globulus, blue gums. And because of their size, they will blow over. And I suspect that's what the previous forest group were interested in, were millable, harvestable type trees like Eucalyptus globulus, or the ultimate, the Eucalyptus nitens. And that's why I suspect that Patrick's piece of land didn't interest them, because they were looking at it from a forestry perspective.